In 2022, Taiwan's Food and Drug Administration implemented a strict new set of Good Manufacturing Practice, or GMP, standards for the domestic cosmetic industry. The results of the subsequent audits were severe. To understand why this happens, we need to apply Taiwan's physical audit criteria to the international facilities supplying the market. Judged strictly by Taiwan's rules, which demand hyper-sterile, partitioned environments, some of the most trusted cosmetic factories in the world would systematically fail the audit. We can verify this by running a comparative analysis. We reviewed operational footage from 11 leading international factory sites across 6 countries and cross-referenced their visible floor practices against the 6 most frequently violated TFDA codes. The data reveals a structural asymmetry in regulatory design, where the criteria for localized safety audits diverge sharply from global manufacturing practices. This dashboard displays the exact parameters we are testing. These 6 specific TFDA codes, covering everything from zone isolation to cleaning status, account for over 60% of all domestic audit failures. These 6 regulations fall into 2 distinct categories: physical facility architecture and equipment management protocols. The TFDA treats these provisions as rigid engineering mandates, requiring specific material and spatial configurations rather than general operational goals. Audit failures currently center on concrete, exposed pipes, and floor plans, effectively prioritizing facility architecture over the chemical integrity of the products themselves. Let's apply these rules to volume leaders in Europe, starting with Lush in the UK and Nivea in Germany. This image highlights the conflict with TFDA Code Section 14, which mandates perfectly smooth, easily cleanable surface materials and fully closed ceilings. The visible exposed brick bases and raw overhead piping in both the German and UK facilities trigger an immediate critical failure under this specific code. Then there is Section 11, which requires distinct physical floor-to-ceiling partitions, separating manufacturing areas from storage and packaging. The open-plan manufacturing halls favored by these global brands completely ignore these physical partition rules, placing vats, raw materials, and packaging lines in the same continuous space. The architectural baseline that supports massive production output for these European mega brands is strictly outlawed by Taiwanese regulators. Beyond architecture, international operational flexibility clashes with Taiwan's procedural mandates. We see this clearly when examining workflow at Sukin in Australia and contract manufacturer Mayfield in the UK. Here we are tracking Section 13, the mandate for strict personnel flow control. On the left is the Taiwan requirement for a rigid unidirectional flow from black, dirty zones to white, clean zones. This local requirement demands specialized airlocks and dedicated cleanroom garments for any personnel before they even enter a mixing zone. Conversely, mapping the workflow at the international sites shows workers routinely operating filling lines and moving raw material bins while wearing standard street clothes, simple vests, or jeans. The fluid, cross-functional operations that are standard practice in foreign manufacturing sites are treated as severe, immediate contamination risks under TFDA guidelines. When we scale these isolated observations up across the entire dataset, a broader pattern emerges. This defect matrix calculates the aggregate failure rates for the 12 analyzed international sites. 92% fail Section 11 isolation requirements, 92% fail Section 13 personnel flow, and 75% failed the Section 14 material specifications. Based on these parameters, nearly 0 of the analyzed international sites could pass a first-time TFDA physical audit. This high rate of non-compliance with Taiwanese hardware standards is a universal feature of the global cosmetic industry. It points to a systemic flaw in the local testing criteria, rather than a failing of the global factories themselves. If these factories fail Taiwan standards so comprehensively, why are their products consistently considered globally safe? The answer lies in this chart, detailing ISO 22716, the global standard that actually governs these international facilities. The ISO operates on a risk-based philosophy. It dictates that premises only need to be suitable for the specific operation taking place. It acknowledges that manufacturing a dry bath bomb carries a different risk profile than producing a liquid serum, and allows factories to adapt accordingly. Taiwan's TFDA, however, utilizes a specification-based philosophy, directly porting rigid hardware rules from pharmaceutical manufacturing over to cosmetics.
This friction is caused by specific pharma-derived mandates, the enforcement of ISO 8573 compressed air standards, universal room pressure differentials, and mandatory daily weight calibrations. Applying a rigid pharmaceutical framework to the cosmetics industry creates persistent friction with a global market built on flexible risk assessment. This regulatory mismatch creates an immediate financial consequence, illustrated by this scale showing the severe capital expenditure, or CapEx, disparity. Domestic factories are forced to absorb massive costs to retrofit complex HVAC systems, pour specialized epoxy floors, and build physical partitions just to achieve basic audit compliance. Imported brands bypass these engineering costs entirely. Border regulators only test their final product chemistry upon import, never sending inspectors to evaluate their actual factory architecture. The current regulatory regime acts as a punitive tax levied exclusively on domestic manufacturers, shielding foreign brands from equal compliance costs and protecting their market dominance. To protect Taiwan's cosmetic manufacturing base, we need 3 updated protocols. First, replace pharmaceutical hardware specifications with ISO-aligned risk-based assessments fitting the actual product hazard level. Second, establish mutual recognition agreements to ensure equal cross-border oversight, holding imported brands to a proportional standard. Internationally harmonized, scientifically sound standards provide a more sustainable path to consumer safety than isolating the domestic industry behind rigid physical specifications.